Hello everybody and welcome to Toi To You Curator's Corner, episode number 20. My name's Sean Brosnan. I'm a curator at Toi To Otago Settlers Museum here in Dunedin, and I began making these small videos during the coronavirus lockdown of 2020, and I've just kept them going now because people have liked them. So, in the last episode we talked about Dunedin's second doctor, and you may have wondered, well, what about the first doctor in Dunedin? Well, I'm glad you asked, because Dr. Henry Manning is one of my favourite characters among the Dunedin pioneer settlers, a very unusual man. His portrait holds pride of place on wall 1 of the famous portrait gallery at Toi To, and you can see straight away, looking at this portrait, that he's a striking looking fellow, rather handsome really, and with great hair. Well, he thought so too. He was notoriously vain, especially about those long glossy curls. Apparently he used special curling papers to maintain that hairstyle, a bit like the hair gel of his day, I guess. But he had to apply them at night, wrapping them around his hair in some manner to keep up the look. The only problem with that was he sometimes forgot all about the curling papers, and when he went to attend to his first patients early in the morning, they would still be in his hair, which I suppose is why we know about the particular foible of his. Now, Henry Manning was an Englishman born in London, and he'd qualified as a doctor there in 1837. He'd already made one voyage to New Zealand as a ship's doctor to Nelson in 1840, but then he'd gone back and had been in practice in England for a while before signing up to be the ship's doctor on the John Wycliffe for its voyage to Dunedin in 1847. He stayed on thereafter with the settlers and became thereby the first resident doctor in Dunedin. But with just a few hundred, pretty healthy young people, there wasn't probably all that much for him to do. And in any case, in 1850, he left Otago and seems to have gone back to England for a while. He returned, however, at the beginning of 1852 and set up in practice again, this time in competition, in competition with Dr. Purdy. But by now there were a lot more people around, and so there was enough for them to be getting on with, enough for 2 doctors. Manning was apparently a skilled surgeon who was very good at fixing broken bones and dislocations, which were a very common form of injury in the pioneer settlement. And his work as a doctor was well regarded. But he was somewhat eccentric in character, and those aspects of his personality gave him something of a mixed reputation, particularly among the more pious Presbyterians. For one thing, he had a fiery temper and a foul tongue to go with it, which he was wont to give full vent to whenever he was irked, which was apparently very often. He once challenged Dunedin's first judge to a duel after the latter had made disparaging comments about a female friend of the doctor's in a court case, and he had to be bound over with a £200 bond to keep the peace for 12 months. Manning was known to be very kind and generous to the poor and sick, often waiving payments entirely for his services. But to the well-to-do and haughty, he sometimes took a violent dislike and could be very hard to call out to attend to their medical needs. And he used terrible language to and about them when he did. There's one story, for instance, about, it comes from his later time when he was in South Otago rather than Dunedin, but he was called out to attend to the broken leg of one of his enemies, a prosperous settler who had often rebuked the doctor in public for his foul language. Now, very reluctantly attending to this injury, Manning promptly sent in his bill the next day for £50, which was an outrageous sum. I think it's actually more than what the annual wages for an agricultural labourer would have been at the time, so pretty significant dosh, really. But the recipient of his services sent back a cheque to that amount immediately. Well, next morning, the doctor made a surreptitious return visit to the farmhouse where he'd attended his patient, and he called for the lady of the house. And when she came to the door, he handed her the £50 cheque, and he said, "This is for you, yourself, and don't say a word about it to the villain." I actually don't think he would have said villain, probably something a bit stronger, in the front room. With that, he doffed his hat and was on his way, much to the amazement of the woman who sat there with this incredible sum of money for her personal use. Now, Dr. Manning was also very fond of dogs and horses, and actually you can see in the portrait his dog Carlo, who was apparently very seldom without. He tended to treat the animals as if they were humans, in fact, such as the time he was asked to make a donation to some subscription fund or other, and he refused to give a penny. But he apparently said, "My horse Harry, however, will give £10. Riding horses was one of his passions. And Dr. Fulton, whose history of early medical practitioners Otago is my source for this and many, many other colourful anecdotes about Dr. Manning, describes him as Dunedin's first road hog. He had imported a very fine steed from Australia and loved to pound Dunedin's primitive roads at high speed, threatening to run down anyone who got in his way, splashing pedestrians from head to foot with mud as he galloped along Princes Street. Now, this eventually got him in trouble. In 1855, he was finally prosecuted for furious riding. Now, the doctor's response to this was characteristically idiosyncratic. In the same issue of the newspaper that carried the report of his conviction, he placed an advertisement that began by quoting a Shakespearean insult from Much Ado About Nothing, and was followed by a Latin phrase which I think roughly translates as, "A man is known by the company he keeps." And then there was a statement as to his future intentions. Now, I can't actually understand what this means at all, but maybe his contemporaries got the message, or maybe they didn't. It might just as easily have sailed right over their heads too. But that was Dr. Manning, Dunedin's first resident physician. A top medical practitioner, but a man of many foibles. So I hope you enjoyed that story, and if you did, you might like to subscribe to this channel, click the bell icon to be notified of future episodes, and until the next one, bye for now.